Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got the Walther PDP Compact on the table. Of course, it's chambered in 9mm, and I kind of showed you this last week when it just first arrived. We hadn't had a chance to take it to the range. I've had it to the range, so now I can actually do a review on it and talk about it. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the magazine and show that it's unloaded. By the way, this thing here, this is my new pocket knife. I'm not bringing a knife to a gunfight. I'll probably do a review on this thing later. This is one cool knife. But this is a video about a gun, so we'll move away from the knife and move back to the PDP. So there's a lot of things about this that are similar and dissimilar to the PPQ. I'm not going to make this video about how this is not a PPQ, because it's not a PPQ. So I'm going to kind of focus on what is this gun, and then we'll do a review on the PPQ itself. Now, of course, as I mentioned, this is the compact. It also comes in a full-size 4-inch and a full-size 4.5. Basically, same gun, just longer, and the grip is longer on the full size so that you can hold 18 rounds instead of the two 15-round magazines this comes with. It comes with very PPQ-ish looking magazines. The only difference is they don't have the PPQ logo on them. But we did take this to the range, and I ran it with PPQ magazines, and it ran flawlessly. So any of the PPQ M2 magazines will run in it. So if you've got a PPQ or you've got a bunch of magazines or the PDP specific magazines aren't readily available, you could just get PPQ M2 mags and they're going to run fine. And speaking about running fine, from the first time I pulled the trigger till we were done, this gun just worked. Not a single malfunction, everything. And of course I did clean it. I don't run them dry out of the box. I cleaned and oiled it like I do any gun. Took it to the range and it just worked. And it ate the CCI that the Glock a couple weeks ago wasn't interested in eating. It ate it right from the beginning, and I also ran some MagTech through it, and of course it ran flawlessly with that. So some of the features this thing has, first off, let's just talk about the dimensions. It is a compact gun, so it's a Glock 19 PPQ size gun. It's 7.5 inches front to back. It's 5.4 inches tall with a flush magazine in it. And it's 1.34 inches thick, which is a little on the thick side, but not ridiculously thick. It's a little thicker than some of the competition, but it's not excessively thick. And it weighs 24.4 ounces, as you see it here in my hand with an empty magazine, 21.4 without the magazine. Now, this is, as I mentioned, a 15-round mag. I see no reason that this would not work with the 18-round mags that are available for the full size. It would just hang down. I'm not aware of there being an extender for it. And one thing I will note, that this does have good solid magazine springs. It really will eject the magazine well, so you're unlikely to get a stuck magazine, even though it does kind of, when I pull on it, it felt a little bit of drag right at that spot, but it's not excessive. It will drop free, even an empty mag, which of course speeds up mag changes. It does have a nice large trigger guard, so that if you're wearing gloves, then you're going to have plenty of room in the trigger guard for your gloves. It's got a little serration and a curvature on the front of the trigger guard for those that like to put a finger up there. I know that's a big contentious thing. You know, the people that do love it, the people that don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but to each his own, do as you see fit. It has a 3-slot Picatinny rail. And it's got really robust slide serrations, both front and rear, and they're deep and they're wide. They're easy to get a hold of, but the edges aren't sharp, so you're not going to get hurt or cut into your fingers. And if it were up against your body, it's not going to bite into you. It's got the new texture, they call it the PDP, Performance Duty texture, and it's kind of very similar to what's on the Q5 series. It's a little bunch of hexagons that kind of stand up. It's very grippy. On the steel frame, by the way, on the Q5, Q4 steel frames. It's very grippy. It covers the entirety of the grip all the way up to the front where your thumb would go. Then there's a kind of a crosshatch pattern on the front strap and on the magazine release. And the hexagonal pattern carries across the back straps. And it comes with 3 back straps. The medium you see on here, a small, and a large, and the large has an extended beaver tail, so you don't lose the backstrap capability. A couple of the other things that this has, it has a slight bevel to the magwell. It's not really pronounced, but it's just a slight bevel. It'll kind of help you guide the magazine in, but it's not an extreme like a flare. One thing it does have, and whether or not this is actually truly a useful feature or just some fun marketing stuff, this little flare here at the front is designed to ensure that when you've got a red dot on it, you bring the red dot up in view on target the first time. I'm not so sure that that would do anything any different than just practicing, just working with the red dot and getting used to bringing a red dot up. The one thing with red dots is if you bring it up and the dot is visible, you're going to have very fast acquisition. If you bring it up and the dot is not visible, you're going to go hunting. Whereas with sights, if you bring it up and the sights are misaligned, you still see the sights. It's very obvious when I bring this gun up and I look at the sights, I can tell I've got it wrong, and I know where the sights are, and I know where I need to go to get it right. With a red dot, if you can't see the dot, you don't know where it is. So the concept behind this is it helps ensure that you bring the gun up properly with the red dot in alignment, but I'm not sure how much that really does. A few other things, it has the takedown levers that you're used to, and you'll see that when I take it apart. It works the same as a PPQ. So if you're used to maintaining one of those, then you're good to go. And of course, a lot of talk about red dots down here. It has an optics plate, so it is red dot ready. But one negative on this, it doesn't come with any plates. They'll give you one plate for free, but you have to fill out a form on their website and they'll send you the plate. So I did fill the form out the day I got the gun. I got a confirmation email that says thanks for ordering your plate. I haven't seen anything since. So if you're going to go red dot with this gun, plan that you're not going to be able to go red dot day one. You're not going to bring it home with the red dot and put it on there instantaneously. You're going to have to pick the right plate, and you're going to have to wait for the red dot plate to show up. And here's the other side of it. Magazine catch is reversible, but it is not ambidextrous, but it does have an ambi slide stop slide release. Oh, and one note too, it's got an adjustable rear sight. And it is height and windage, or elevation and windage adjustable. And I do need to adjust this one. What I found is this was printing high, or I'm sorry, printing low. So I had to aim, instead of aiming in a perfect sight picture like that, I had to kind of do this to hit where I was wanting to go. Good news is I can fix that. I just didn't spend time at the range doing that. I just compensated for it temporarily. But it's not a good idea to compensate for something like that long term. If you got an adjustable sight, then and it needs adjusting, adjust it. Now, it wasn't low left or low right. It was low center. So it wasn't trigger or grip. It was basically the sight just needs to be tweaked. And speaking of sights, it does have nice 3-dot sights, but they're kind of tight. And you can see them better on the range, by the way, a little bit of glare from the studio lights here. But one thing I noticed is the gap is a little bit tight, and it made it a little slower to acquire the target. I'm thinking that basically you can probably pull tighter groups long term with it, but you're going to be a little slower versus the more open sights on, let's say, a Glock and other things like that. Which, by the way, if you don't like these sights and you want to replace the sights, it takes Glock sights. So they're readily available. So if you're wanting to go fiber optic or tritium or whatever, there's just, when it comes to Glock sights, whether you like Glock factory sights or not, which of course would fit on this, but the aftermarket is just rife with sight options. It does, oops, I got a magazine. It does cycle very smoothly. It's a little bit on the heavy side. And the business end has kind of got an interesting pattern. It's kind of somewhat of a triangle shape flattened off at the top. It's less rounded at the front end than a PPQ. But they have beveled this in to make it easier to holster. So you do kind of get this kind of squared off triangle shape at the front end of it. As far as holsters, I suspect that this will work with some PPQ holsters, but not all. The distinct rounded nature of the PPQ, it's kind of shaped like this actually, it's just taller. If the holster is customized to that shape, then this won't fit. If the holster is more open at the top, maybe to allow for different sight options and things like that, then this may fit. But I think you're going to find an inconsistent fit with PPQ holsters based on how they designed that particular holster and how tight they made it. A couple other things that they advertise on this. Number one is they advertise this as being modular. But it's not modular in the concept of like the P320 with the removable chassis. But the bottom line is what they're saying is any slide and any frame can be combined to produce a Franken gun and have it work. So I could put a 4.5-inch slide on this compact frame and it would work. I could put this compact slide, the shorter slide, on a 4.5 frame and it would work. Now it may look kind of weird, things may hang off one end or the other, but the gun will function. But as far as being able to pull the chassis out and just get a polymer shell like you can with the P320, it doesn't support that, but you can mix and match the slide and frame, and they do make it a point of mentioning that third-party slides would also work. There aren't any right now, but conceptually they're planning on allowing the aftermarket, or at least supporting the aftermarket in creating slides for it, kind of like has become very popular with Glock. You can buy a dozen different aftermarket slides for Glocks. I don't know if they're staging this to be in that realm or not. We'll see what the aftermarket chooses to do with it. It's got all the safeties you're used to in a polymer pistol or striker gun. It has the inertial drop safety protection on the trigger, and this toggle goes very, very smoothly and very easily and disappears. It has also the internal drop safety plunger, which is a striker block. So now that I got the trigger zoomed in, let's operate the trigger. So there is minimal take-up. The total trigger travel is 0.28 inches. No real defined wall, and a super short break. Then a short reset and just a hint of take-up to get back on what little wall there is, and then the break. This is an awesome trigger. One thing I did find with it, though, is the wall is so light that it was, in the beginning, easy to do unintended double taps. So you're going to need to practice with this trigger if you're wanting to ride the reset and you'll be right on it. Pull the trigger, cycle it, be right on the reset and fire again. If you're doing that and you haven't practiced with it, you're going to get a couple double taps that weren't planned. This is a really, really good trigger, and it's a very light, very smooth trigger, but to use it to its best effect, you need to do a little bit of practice. Once, by the end of the range session, both of us were doing very controlled double taps. We were pulling, it was only firing when we wanted it to. In the very beginning, I had a handful of pull the trigger, come off the reset, pull the trigger. Now the gun was still on target because this stays right on target. It doesn't really flip, but I didn't plan to shoot that microsecond. I wanted to kind of lighten up a little more, and it went off. So plan to practice with the trigger if you're going to use the reset to what it's really capable of. The only other thing I'll quickly mention is the top of it is smooth. There's no serrations or texture on the top, unlike the PPQ, which may make it more inclined to glare. I didn't get any glare at the range, but a lot of guns you'll see have a texture up here, especially on this spine across the top, to kind of diffract glare. So it's possible if you had the sun hit it just right. It is a matte finish, so it's probably not as inclined to glare, but that is an interesting difference. Now, as far as takedown, so far, one thing I can say about this gun is they haven't ruined anything. The only thing that may be controversial is the shape of the slide, but other than that, all of the features that you're used to are still here. Takedown is relatively easy. You do pull the trigger, pull back just a hair, and that just takes tension off. It's not absolutely necessary, but it takes tension off these pull-down slides, just like the PPQ. You have a single wafer-style recoil spring. Here's your sear. Here's your drop safety plunger. And the barrel, which is very, very well machined. And we got my light here. And you'll see it is polygonal rifling, just like all the guns in this series, which gives you a little bit better stabilization, a little bit better velocity. And all the machining is nice, which is what I've come to expect from Walther. Everything's well machined, no burrs, no excessive machining marks. Everything is the way it needs to be, but there's no excessive finery. They're not into polishing things that don't need to be polished to function. Reassembly is relatively easy. Line the spring back up. Now we'll set that aside for the moment. The frame is very familiar if you've ever operated any of the other recent polymer Walthers. You've got slide guides front and rear. They're not super large, but they are very effective. The spring's a little different. It's got more coils, and it's a coppery color. This is a little different fire control group from other guns that I'm recently used to with Walther. And this fixed ejector is a little bit interesting, but it does work well. And of course you have the humps for the various drop safeties. So as you pull the trigger slowly, these humps disengage the safeties, so you do have your drop safeties, and of course they're still made in Germany. So let's put this thing back together, which is easy-ish. There's one thing you do have to pay attention to, just somehow on the design of this. If you're not paying attention, it does like to ride up a little bit, and it's easy to get it kind of hung up. But you just push down on it just a hair, and it goes back into place, and you're back into operation. So it's a very easy to live with gun. It's easy to shoot well once you practice with it a little bit, get used to the sights, get used to the trigger. And in the future, I'll be able to comment on how easy it is to put a Vortex Venom red dot, the one that we kind of prefer, on this once the plate arrives, however long that may take. That, to me, is kind of a negative. I get it. Most people are only going to use one plate, so why include 3? But the plates aren't overly expensive. I'd rather the gun cost $5 more or $10 more and just come with the plates. That way I don't have to worry about ordering and waiting. A lot of times when I'm buying an optics ready gun, I buy the optic, I buy the gun, I plan them to arrive together, and the first outing to the range is optics ready to go. You're not doing that with this unless you want to pay for the plate. To fill out the form to get the plate, you have to put the serial number of the gun in. So unless you know your serial number, you can't order the plate in advance. So that's one little bit of a negative. So with an MSRP of $649 for any one of the 3 sizes in an optics ready gun is actually pretty good. Now the one thing I will do, and I'm not going to do a full comparison with a PPQ, but I do have a PPQ here, and I'm just going to set it side by side so you can see the size, and you can see that they're within fractions of each other. So if you're used to a PPQ or you're looking for a gun in that size, you can easily carry either one of these. There's just a slight height difference and just a slight length difference, but nothing that's going to make a difference in a holster. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to get notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook and Patreon, and have a great day. Thank you.